Picture this. You're sprawled out maybe with a fan humming softly ready to drift into a tale that's half history, half campfire yarn. Tonight we're cracking open the life of Alexander the Great. Not the sword-swinging, empire-carving legend, but the guy who had to choke down breakfast before he could conquer the world. This is the man who tamed wild horses as a kid, founded cities, like he was doodling on a map and still faced the daily grind of deciding what to shove in his face. Was it lamb roasted over a fire, lentils boiled to a sad mush, or just whatever didn't scamper off his plate? Before we dig into his royal pantry, hit that like button. If you're vibing with this, subscribe for more and drop a comment where you at. And what's the clock saying? I'm curious who's slurping noodles at 3 AM while we talk ancient grub. Now dim the lights, settle in, and let's wander back to Macedon, where young Alexander wasn't yet the great, but just a kid with a bowl of misery. It's a frosty morning in Pella, Macedon's capital, around 340 BCE. The sun's barely peeked over the hills, and the air smells like wood smoke and damp wool. You're Alexander, maybe 10 years old, shivering in a tunic that itches like it's plotting revenge. The kitchen's already clanging servants stirring pots, muttering about how nobody appreciates their hustle. Breakfast is served, and it's not exactly a feast fit for a prince. The star of the show, boiled barley gruel, a steaming pile of beige despair that tastes like wet sand with a grudge. It's thick, slightly salty, and clings to your spoon like it's staging a protest. If you're lucky, there's a dribble of goat's milk to cut the monotony, or on a big day, a dried fig that's seen better days shriveled like it's been through a war. Next to it sits bread baked from barley or emmer flour, so dense it could knock out a Spartan if you threw it hard enough. It's got a crust like leather, and a texture that dares your teeth to try harder. Then there's the sides olives, bitter as a philosopher's rant swimming in brine that stings your lips. Maybe a wedge of goat cheese aged until it smells like it's ready to fight you in the agora. To wash it down, wine, but don't get excited, it's so watered down it's basically grape-flavoured sadness. Macedonians thought straight wine was for barbarians or poets with no self-respect. This meal isn't about luxury, it's about survival. Your dad, King Philip the Gear, isn't raising a pampered prince. He's forging a weapon, and that starts with food that builds muscle, not dreams. Every bite's a reminder life's tough kid, and so are you. As you chew, you're already thinking about the day's drills, sword practice, horse riding, or dodging Aristotle's lectures. This breakfast is fuel for a boy who'll one day stare down empires. So grab your spoon, grimace through the gruel, and let's see what lunch brings. It's midday in Macedon, and you're Alexander, a lanky teen with a head full of dreams and a stomach growling for something better than breakfast barley sludge. You're trudging to a shady grove where Aristotle, your tutor, waits with a scroll and a smirk that says he's about to ruin your day with logic. Lunch is spread out on a rough wooden table, and it's not exactly a buffet. There's barley bread hard as a shield, and twice as unforgiving a bowl of lentils that look like they gave up on life, and a few olives that gleam with oily defiance. If you're feeling fancy, there's a sliver of goat cheese pungent enough to wake a coma patient. Aristotle's already nibbling lecturing between bites about how moderation builds character. You just want to eat, but no, this meal's a battlefield and philosophy's the enemy. Aristotle, with his beard like a bird's nest and eyes that see through your soul, isn't just teaching you rhetoric or geometry. He's sculpting a king, and food's his chisel. Too much cheese, he drawls, raising an eyebrow as you reach for another chunk and your wits grow sluggish as a mule in mud. You roll your eyes, but he's relentless, quoting Plato about balance and Hippocrates on how lentils purify the soul. Lentils you think taste like regret dusted with dirt, but you nod because arguing with Aristotle is like wrestling a porcupine, painful and pointless. He's got a point though. This simple spread isn't just lunch, it's a lesson in discipline. No honeyed cakes, no spiced meats, just food that keeps you lean sharp and ready to outthink a Persian army. The diluted wine, barely purple, sloshes in your cup, a reminder that excess is for fools who lose empires. As you chew the bread, your jaw's getting a workout, you're absorbing more than calories. Aristotle's droning about ethics, how a leader's strength lies in saying no to temptation. You're half listening, half plotting how to sneak an extra fig later, but his words stick. Years from now, when you're facing Persian banquets dripping with gold and gluttony, you'll remember this. A king who can't master his appetite can't master the world. The olives, bitter and bracing, snap you back to the moment. Aristotle's moved on to logic sketching diagrams in the dirt. You're not just eating, you're training to think to lead to conquer. This lunch, grim as it is forging a mind that'll outlast marble. So you swallow the lentils, wince at the aftertaste, and brace for the afternoon sparring. Dinner with your dad's up next, and that's a whole different war. You're Alexander, barely 16, sweating under a Macedonian sun that feels like it's personally offended by your existence. You're out in the fields training with your father's soldiers, your sandals caked with dust that's probably older than the gods. Lunchtime hits, and you're dreaming of something. Anything that doesn't taste like duty. But this is Macedon, not some Persian pleasure palace, so you get the Macedonian lunchbox, a burlap pouch of pure survival. It's less a meal and more a dare eat this and prove you're tougher than the dirt you're sitting on. Unwrap it and you're greeted by a chunk of barley bread baked so hard it could double as a siege weapon. It's got the texture of a roof tile and the flavour of a grudge daring your teeth to commit to the grind. Next up, a wedge of goat cheese smelling like it's ready to challenge you to a duel. It's salty tangy and leaves a whiff that lingers like bad news. Onions join the party, raw, sharp, and so pungent they could make a Spartan cry. Macedonians swear they build strength, but you're pretty sure they're just diplomatic weapons. If you're lucky, there's a handful of dried figs, chewy and sweet but gritty with seeds, that get stuck in your teeth like tiny regrets. For protein, a strip of salted goat meat dried until it's more leather than lunch. It's tough, chewy, and tastes like it's been through a campaign already. To drink lukewarm water from a leather flask that's been baking in the sun, tasting faintly of saddle and despair. Diluted wine's a rare treat, and today's not that day. You sit cross-legged in the dirt, tearing into the bread with the focus of a general planning a siege. This isn't about enjoyment, it's about not collapsing mid-drill. Your companions, grizzled soldiers with scars older than you, eat the same, no complaints. That's the Macedonian way, no fuss, no frills, just fuel. You're learning that leadership means sharing the grind, not dodging it. As you choke down the onions, your breath now a war crime, you glance at the horizon, dreaming of battles and glory. This lunchbox, miserable as it is your first conquest of the day. It's keeping you alive, lean, and just angry enough to keep pushing. Wipe the sweat from your brow, stow the pouch and get back to training. Dinner's waiting, and with your dad, King Philip, it's bound to be a battlefield of its own. Evening falls over Pella, and you're Alexander, a teenager with ambition burning hotter than the torches lighting the royal hall. Dinner with your father, King Philip II, isn't a cosy family affair, it's a high-stakes game of politics, wine, and barely veiled insults. You stride in tunic still dusty from training, and the air hits you, roasted meat wood smoke, and the faint tang of spilled wine. The table's a war zone of food, piled with thick slabs of lamb, charred crisp, but bloody inside, and bowls of lentil stew so hearty they could anchor a ship. There's barley bread softer than your lunch, but still no friend to your jaw, and jugs of wine that gleam like liquid rubes. This isn't Macedonian austerity, it's a flex of power, but it's still miles from Persian decadence. You sit eyeing Philip across the table. He's a bear of a man, one eye scarred, his laugh booming like a siege engine. He's already deep in his cups, wine staining his beard, arguing with a grizzled general about border forts. You grab a hunk of lamb, its grease slicking your fingers, and chew slowly, tasting smoke and salt. The stew's next lentils swimming in a broth that's more grit than flavour, spiked with herbs that bite back. Olives and cheese round it out their sharpness, cutting through the meat's heaviness. The wine's strong, not the watered-down kid stuff, but you sip sparingly. Philip's known for mixing diplomacy with drunken rants, and you're not here to lose your edge. Last time he got sloshed, he called you soft. You're still stinging from that one. Around you, the halls are circus advisors shouting over each other, a poet mangling Homer, and some philosopher tossing shade in Greek. Philip's wives, plural, glare from the sidelines, their jewellery clinking like warning bells. You keep quiet, slicing your bread, plotting how to outshine this man who's both your hero and your headache. Occasionally he tosses you a curveball like a spiced fish from some Greek island, its flavour sharp and strange. You nod politely, but stick to the basics, meat-bread discipline. This dinner's a crucible forging your instincts. You're learning to navigate egos, dodge traps, and stay sharp while your dad's halfway to a hangover. As you push away your plate, stomach full but mind racing, you know one thing you'll outdo him, plate by plate, war by war. Tomorrow's rations await, but for now you've survived the royal table. You're Alexander in your 20s, now leading an army through some god's-forsaken stretch of Persian dust, where the sun's a hammer and the ground's a skillet. Your sandals are more holes than leather, and your throat's so dry it could spark a fire. Camp's set for the night, and it's time for the grand feast, except it's not. This is campaign life, and your dinner's what the army calls rations, which is just a polite way of saying food that hates you. You plop down by a flickering campfire, its smoke stinging your eyes, and untie a linen pouch that's seen better days. Inside, the usual suspects, barley bread hard as a tax collector's heart, and so dense it could sink a trireme. Biting it feels like a personal vendetta between your jaw and the grain. There's dried goat meat salted until it's more mineral than muscle, sliced so thin it's practically a memory. It's chewy tough, and tastes like it's been cursing your name since it was slaughtered. Onions are your vegetable du jour, raw, pungent, and guaranteed to make your breath a weapon of mass diplomacy. They're cheap they keep, and they supposedly make you stronger, though you're starting to think that's just propaganda to keep you eating them. If the supply caravan wasn't raided by bandits or wolves, you might get a couple of dried figs, sticky and sweet but gritty like they've been rolled in the desert floor. For a drink, there's diluted wine, just enough to mask the fact that the water in your flask tastes like it's been stewing in horse sweat all day. Straight water risky unless you fancy a gut that rebels harder than a satrap. You're eating the same slop as your men hunched around their own fires, grumbling about blisters and missing home. That's the point. No special treatment. No royal chef sneaking you honeyed cakes. You tear into the bread, your teeth protesting, and chew like you're proving a point. This isn't just food. It's a pact with your army. You share their hunger, their grit, their rage at this miserable meal. Keeps you lean, alert, and just mad enough to keep marching toward the next city to sack. As you swallow the last onion eyes watering, you glance at the stars plotting tomorrow's march. The fire crackles, and you know worse is coming, deserts, mountains, and thirst that makes this pouch look like a banquet. You're Alexander deep in a Persian desert where the heat's a living thing clawing at your skin, and the horizon's a cruel mirage that promises nothing but more sand. Your army's been marching for days, a ragged snake of men, horses, and creaking carts. Your lips are cracked, your tongue's a stranger, and your sandals feel like they're melting into your feet. Water's scarcer than mercy here, and the last stream you passed was more mud than miracle. Then, a soldier sunburned half dead, but grinning like he's found gold rushes upholding his helmet like it's a sacred relic. Inside sloshes a pitiful puddle scooped from some frog-cursed ditch. It's murky, probably unsafe, but to your parched men it's life itself. He offers it to you. The king, the conqueror, the guy who's supposed to get first dibs. You look at the water swirling with grit, and then at your army, thousands of eyes hollow with thirst, watching your every move. You could drink. Nobody'd blame you. You're Alexander, for Zeus's sake, the man who's dragged them across half the world. But you don't. You thank the soldier, your voice a rasp, and then slowly, so everyone sees you tip the helmet and pour the water into the sand. It vanishes in seconds like a sacrifice to some angry desert god. The men gasp, then fall silent. You say nothing, but the message is louder than a war horn. If I can't drink, neither will you until we all do. It's not about the water, it's about the will to keep going. Your throat screams, but your heart's steady. You're not just their king, you're their mirror showing them they're tougher than they feel. This isn't just a story. It's leadership carved in dust. That helmet, it's no chalice. It's a beat-up bronze bowl that's doubled as a soup pot and a shaving mirror. Was the water even safe? Probably not. Ancient armies didn't have filtration systems, just desperation. But you turned a sip into a spectacle, dehydration into defiance. As you hand the empty helmet back, the soldier nods, eyes shining. Your men straighten their grumbling quieted. You've bought them another day of march, another mile of faith. The desert stretches on merciless, but you're already scanning for the next oasis. Tonight's rations will taste like defeat, but you'll eat them anyway, knowing this moment pouring out life to save spirit will outlast empires. You're Alexander striding into a Persian palace, your boots still caked with the dust of a dozen conquered cities. The air's thick with incense heavy as a hangover, and the banquet hall before you is a fever dream of excess. Tables groan under golden platters piled with saffron rice glinting like desert sunset, and lamb stewed in pomegranates so rich it could bribe a god. There's flatbread soft as a noble's ego, and pastries dripping with honey, each one a tiny betrayal of your Macedonian roots. The wine flows in crystal pitchers catching torchlight like liquid fire, and fruits, dates, figs, pomegranates are stacked in pyramids that mock your army's lean rations. You pause, taking it in. This isn't a meal. It's a diplomatic ambush designed to dazzle and disarm. You're half expecting a PowerPoint presentation on Persian greatness. You sit your men gawking like kids at a festival, their eyes wide at the spread. You're used to barley bread that fights back onions that wage war on your breath. This is seduction on a plate. You try a spoonful of rice fragrant with spices that tickle your nose like a philosopher's riddle. The lamb's tender melting a far cry from the leathery strips you chewed in the desert. A pastry catches your eye stuffed with dates dusted with cinnamon, and you take a bite, its sweetness hitting like a cavalry charge. But you stop there. Your men dive in, tearing into quail and sipping wine like they've forgotten what sand tastes like. You let them. They've earned this after months of grit and gruel. But you're still the guy who grew up on Aristotle's lectures about restraint. Excess is a trap and empires fall when kings get too cozy with honeyed cakes. The Persian nobles watch you reclining on silk cushions, their rings flashing as they nibble delicacies. You stay upright, your posture screaming Macedon, disciplined alert, ready to march at dawn. This banquet's a test, not a treat. You sip the wine, strong unwatered, dangerous, and set it down. Your men cheer bellies full, but you're already thinking of the next campaign. Persia's trying to soften you with saffron and gold, but you're forged in tougher stuff. You push your plate away, the half-eaten rice a quiet rebellion. Tomorrow you'll be back to rations, but tonight you've let your men taste victory. The hall hums with laughter, but you're eyeing the exit, ready for the next fight. Darius's own dining tent waits, and it's going to make this look like a picnic. You're Alexander, standing in what used to be Darius III's royal dining tent, a canvas palace left behind when the Persian king bolted like a deer from a lion. The air smells of roasted lamb, and fear the kind that lingers when an empire's crumbling. You've chased Darius across Asia, and now you're sitting at his table surrounded by gold-plated dishes that gleam like they're mocking your muddy boots. The setup's absurd tables sagging with slow-cooked lamb rice, perfumed with rose water and fish wrapped in fig leaves, each dish more ornate than a temple frieze. There's wine in silver goblets spiced with herbs that make your tongue tingle like it's been bewitched. It's not just a meal, it's a museum of decadence crewed by Darius's terrified chefs, who look like they're one wrong spice away from exile. You sit bolt upright, ignoring the plush couches that invite lounging like a siren's call. Your men, hardened by years of chewing rocks disguised as bread, stare at the spread like it's a mirage. You nod, and they dig in, tearing into meat and slurping sauces that probably took a week to simmer. You pick up a piece of flatbread, soft, treacherous. Nothing like Macedonian grit, and pair it with a slice of lamb, its juices running like a conquered river. It's good, too good, and that's the problem. You've been raised to distrust anything that feels this easy. Aristotle's voice echoes in your head, luxury dulls, the blade softens the will. You chew, slowly, tasting triumph, but spitting out temptation. The wine's offered floral and heady, but you stick to water, cloudy as it is, because clarity's your weapon. The Persian nobles, now swearing loyalty to you, watch nervously, their silk robes clashing with your dust-stained tunic. You're not here to play king of decadence. You're Macedonian, forged in hunger and hardship. This tent with its gold and glitz is a trophy, not a home. You eat just enough to keep your strength, leaving the fish and its fancy leaves untouched. Your men feast their laughter loud, but you're already planning the next march. Darius's chefs hover unsure if they're cooking for a guest or a guillotine. You give them a nod, good work, but don't get comfortable. This meal's a pause, not a surrender. As you step out into the night, the desert air sharp against your skin, you know the real test is coming, keeping your edge when the world's offering you gold on a plate. You're Alexander deep in Persia's gilded haze, surrounded by a banquet that's less a meal and more a drunken opera. The hall's swimming in torchlight, the air thick with roasted lamb, and the musky sting of wine, so much wine it could drown Dionysus himself. Tables sag with rice pilaf studded with saffron date syrup, sticky as ambition, and lamb so tender it falls apart like a bad alliance. Goblets overflow their contents, sloshing onto silk cushions where nobles sprawl giggling like they've forgotten what swords are. You're at the head of it all. Your tunic still stiff with campaign dust, trying to keep your wits while everyone else loses theirs. This isn't a celebration. It's a test, and the wine's the real enemy. You sip the liquid warm and dangerously smooth, but you know one goblet too many could torch your empire. The toasts start long, sloppy odes to your greatness, half Homer, half hiccup. Your men loyal but liquored shout praises that veer into nonsense. To Alexander's sandals someone roars and you wince. Then comes Persepolis, that fateful night when the wine wins. Egged on by cheers, or maybe just your own blurred rage, you grab a torch and set the palace ablaze, its cedar beams crackling like your judgment. Morning brings ash and regret, your head pounding like a war drum. Another night worse, still you're in Babylon, wine-fueled and furious, arguing with Cletus, your friend, your saviour. Words turn to blows, then a spear yours ends him. You wake to tears, vomit, and a hole in your soul. These aren't just drunken nights. They're cracks in the armour you've forged since Macedon. You're not a drunkard, not usually. Aristotle's lectures on balance still nag you, and you'd rather chew barley than lose control. But success breeds excess, and Persia's pouring it by the jug. Your men feast their bellies full of lamb and hubris while you wrestle with the goblet's pull. You set it down the wine untouched and stare into the fire. You're Alexander, conqueror of worlds, but tonight you're fighting yourself. The flames remind you discipline's your real throne. Tomorrow you'll march again, leaving the ashes of excess behind. India's next, and its flavours will test you in ways even wine can't touch. You're Alexander trudging into India, where the air's wet as a sponge and the jungles hum with life that's louder than your army's grumbling. You've crossed deserts that baked your bones, mountains that froze your toes, and now you're hit with a culinary curveball that makes Persian feasts look tame. The local chieftains, wary but hospitable, lay out a spread that's a riot of colour and scent, steaming bowls of lentil curry spiked with turmeric and ginger that sting your nose like a cavalry charge. There's rice fluffy as clouds and flatbreads fried crisp, glistening with oil. Goat simmers in spices you can't name, each bite a slow burn that makes your Macedonian palate sweat. Desserts, dates stuffed with nuts drenched in syrup, gleam like jewels, daring you to indulge. Your men raised on onions and spite squint at the plates like they're deciphering a battle map. One soldier pokes a curry, muttering its witchcraft, while another braves a bite and turns red as a lobster gasping for water. You chuckle, but try the food yourself, spooning curry that lights your mouth like a signal fire. It's strange, bold alive, not the grim fuel of campaign rations. You nod at the hosts, your approval a diplomatic olive branch. You're curious, not fussy, and you know, snubbing their food could spark a rebellion faster than a bad treaty. The spices chili, cumin, tamarind dance on your tongue, a far cry from the salt and sweat simplicity of barley gruel. You even send plates back to your troops, a rare treat to quiet their whining about missing good old stew, which was never good to begin with. India's not just a land, it's a flavour, and it's stretching your army's limits. Elephants lumber by, not dinner, but battlefield beasts, and you're already plotting how to recruit them. The locals' generosity, fried doughs, spice stews, feels like a challenge. Can you stay sharp amidst this sensory storm? You eat sparingly, sticking to rice and meat, your Macedonian core unshaken. As you wipe your hands, the curry's heat lingering like a memory, you glance at your men, some grinning, some grimacing. This meal's more than food, it's a bridge to a new world. You're ready for the next march, but deep down you know those lentils back home are waiting as stubborn as you are. You're Alexander, Emperor of half. The known world, sitting in a Babylonian palace where the air's heavy with incense and the ghosts of fallen kings. You've tasted Persian, saffron Indian curries that set your tongue ablaze, but here you are staring at a wooden bowl of boiled lentils looking like they've surrendered all joy. They're mushy brown and smell faintly of earth and resignation like a farmer's sigh turned edible. You scoop a spoonful and it's the same old story, bland, gritty, with a texture somewhere between porridge and penance. Yet this humble sludge is your North Star, the one constant in a life of conquest and chaos. Lentils don't dazzle, don't demand applause, they just endure like you. No wonder they've followed you from Macedon's chilly hills to this gilded exile. Back home lentils were a peasant's staple, cheap, and filling the kind of food that kept you swinging a sword without dreaming of velvet cushions. Aristotle probably lectured you on their virtues, protein, fibre, soul-cleansing humility, while you rolled your eyes wishing for lamb. Now worlds away you get it. Lentils are safe, unpretentious, politically neutral. They don't come with a side of poison or a whiff of betrayal, unlike those honeyed quails the Persian nobles keep pushing. In a court where every smile hides a dagger, this bowl's your ally. You drizzle a bit of vinegar, maybe crush some garlic if you're feeling wild, and it's almost tolerable. It's not love, it's loyalty. Each bite's a nod to the boy who chewed through Macedonian mornings plotting empires over gruel. Your men feasting on Babylon's bounty probably think you're mad for choosing this over spiced roasts. But you're not here to gorge, you're here to rule. Lentils remind you of a home of campfires where soldiers shared stories of a life before gold platters and yes-men. They're your anchor, keeping you grounded while the world spins into decadence. You swallow the taste lingering like a quiet vow, stay sharp, stay you. As you set the bowl down, a servant offers a jewelled goblet of wine. You wave it off. The lentils have spoken and you're listening. Next up, a march, a siege, and maybe a snack, something simple. Something that won't betray you in the saddle. You're Alexander galloping across a Persian plain, your horse kicking up dust that tastes like defeat and ambition. No time for banquets, you're mid-campaign dodging arrows, redrawing maps in your head, and trying not to think about how your sandals are basically regrets stitched together. Hunger gnaws, but a king doesn't stop for a sit-down lunch. You reach into a leather pouch tied to your saddle, pulling out what passes for a royal snack, a handful of dried figs sticky as a diplomat's promise, and a wedge of goat cheese so hard it could double as a catapult stone. These aren't treats. They're survival kits built to withstand heat horsefalls and the general chaos of conquering the world. The figs are chewy, sweet and gritty with seeds that crunch like tiny insults. Their energy in your pocket, a burst of sugar that keeps you from face-planting into the next dune. Olives come next, oily and bitter, their salt stinging your cracked lips. They're messy, your tunic's now a canvas of stains, but they're electrolytes before anyone knew the word. Roasted chickpeas rattle in a cloth wrap, crunchy and bland, the ancient world's answer to trail mix minus the joy. If you're lucky, there's a few almonds, their nutty bite a reminder of Macedonian groves you haven't seen in years. Everything's dusted with road grit because nothing says world conqueror like snacking on sand and pretending it's seasoning. You chew your jaw working like it's drilling for victory while you shout orders to your scouts. Your men munch the same, their pouches stuffed with identical rations. No silver trays, no peeled grapes, just food that's as tough as they are. You share a fig with a grizzled captain, and he grins teeth black with dust. It's a moment of camaraderie proof you're not above the grind. These snacks aren't decadent. They're defiant, keeping you alive while you redraw the world's borders. Back in Babylon, nobles might scoff at your choices, but here they're perfect. You stow the pouch, wipe your hands on your tunic and spur your horse forward. The next city's waiting, and so's the next feast probably too fancy. Probably trouble. For now, these figs are enough to keep you fighting. You're Alexander, fresh off a battlefield win, standing in a conquered city where the air's thick with smoke and the thrill of victory. The locals, desperate to appease their new king, roll out a feast that's less a meal and more a diplomatic circus. The banquet hall's a riot of excess tables, buckle under roasted oxen, their hides crisp as parchment and rice drenched in pomegranate syrup glowing like spilled rubies. Pastries shaped like birds because why not drip with honey, while wine pours from jugs held by servers decked in more jewels than your armour. There's music flutes wailing like they're auditioning for a tragedy, and acrobats flipping like they've got a personal grudge against gravity. You're at the head table, your men grinning like kids who just raided a pantry, but you know this feast isn't just food, it's theatre, and you're the star. Your soldiers used to chewing leather disguised as meat dive into the spread, tearing into lamb and slurping sauces that probably took a village to simmer. Persian nobles, their silk robes clashing with your dust-stained tunic watch, nervously trying not to choke on their pride. Then come the toasts Macedonian style, which means loud, long, and dangerously boozy. Men compete to outdrink and outshout each other, pledging loyalty to you, your horse, your left sandal. It's chaos like a frat party with swords. You sip your wine, unwatered and potent, but keep your head clear. You've seen feasts like this go sideways Samarkand, where cultural clashes turned a unity dinner into a diplomatic dumpster fire. Someone flipped a platter over a sauce dispute and you had to play referee while dodging flying figs. You nibble on bread plain and familiar, ignoring the peacock stuffed with dates parading by. This feast is a power play, a chance to weld Macedonian grit to Persian pomp. But you're not here to get lost in the sauce. Your restraint's a signal I'm king, not glutton. As the night spirals, someone's wrestling a dancer, another's crying into a lamb leg. You scan the room, plotting the next march. These victory feasts are your stage, but they're also a tightrope. One wrong step and you're not just full, you're finished. You push your plate away, the wine barely touched, and nod to your men. Enjoy it, but don't forget the road ahead. Babylon's waiting, and its feasts will make this look like a warm-up. You're Alexander in Babylon's heart, where the air's heavy with spice and the weight of an empire you've stitched together with blood and ambition. The banquet hall's a spectacle. A culinary coliseum, gold platters gleam under torchlight piled with lamb, fattened on grain rice, swirled with saffron and fruits, dates, figs, pomegranates stacked like tribute. Sauces thick with cumin and honey shimmer in bowls, while wine flows like a river served with incense and harpists, plucking notes that feel like glory's soundtrack. Your table's a geopolitical chessboard, Persian satraps, Indian envoys, Greek generals, all eyeing each other over stuffed quails. You're the centre, but you feel the world's edges fraying. This feast isn't just dinner, it's your empire in miniature fragile, as the crystal goblets clinking around you. You eat lightly bread, a slice of meat, your Macedonian habits, a quiet rebellion against the opulence. Your men feast their laughter loud but brittle, worn from years of marching. You're no stranger to excess, but tonight's different. The wine's strong unwatered, and you sip cautiously, remembering Persepolis' ashes and Cletus' blood. Was this banquet for a god, a friend, or just another Thursday in Babylon nobody's sure, not even you? Then a chill hits not the air, but your bones. You push through, toasting your men, but the room blurs. Days later, your bedridden fever clawing your insides. The man who ate continents can't stomach a sip of water. Servants dab your lips with a damp cloth, their eyes wide with fear. Poison malaria, a liver burned out by ambition, the truth's lost to time. Your last meal, maybe a cup of wine, maybe nothing, fades into myth. You lie still, your empire a fever dream slipping away. The banquet tables are cleared, the gold platters cold. You've conquered worlds, but mortality's the one foe you can't outmarch. Your men weep, but you're quiet, humble, maybe even hungry for the simple lentils of Macedon. Babylon's feasts were your climax, but they're also your curtain call. As you fade, you're not thinking of saffron or silver, just the dust of the road, the taste of barley, and the boy who dreamed of them more. One last march awaits to a place no map can chart. But first let's imagine you in a modern world facing a food court's chaos. Picture yourself as Alexander Cape tattered, but swagger intact, stepping out of a time warp into a modern food court, neon lights buzzing like a Greek oracle on overdrive. The air's a chaotic stew of fried dough, grilled meat, and something suspiciously sweet like victory gone soft. You're squinting at the chaos stalls, hawking tacos, dripping with sauce smoothies glowing in colours nature never intended, and burgers stacked like siege towers. Your Macedonian instincts scream for something solid, something that doesn't look like it's trying to seduce you. You dodge a kid with a tray of glitter-dusted cupcakes seriously, who puts sparkles on food and weave through crowds clutching plastic trays like sacred tablets. This isn't Persepolis, but it's just as overwhelming, and you're still the guy who'd rather chew lentils than lose focus. You scan the options, your eyes narrowing like you're sizing up a Persian phalanx. Fusion bowls with too many ingredients. Past too much like a diplomatic treaty gone wrong. Rainbow slushies, you'd rather drink saddle water. Then you spotted a gyro stand lamb, spinning on a spit, its smoky aroma cutting through the mall's perfume haze like a battle horn. You nod, approving meat bread, simple, honest. You order your voice sharp enough to make the cashier flinch and get a gyro wrapped in pita, stuffed with onions and a yogurt sauce that's suspiciously close to Macedonian cheese. A side of lentil soup catches your eye, its earthy scent a nod to the hills of Pella. You grab it, plus a bottle of water, no wine, because you're not a barbarian, and this place's Merlot looks like it's been plotting betrayal. You sit on a plastic bench, the gyro's grease slicking your fingers, and take a bite, savoury, warm like a campfire meal, but softer. The lentils are mushy but familiar, grounding you amidst the food court's madness. You overhear someone order a Caesar salad and mutter, "What's stabbed in the forum and now a side dish?" A milkshake passes by and you wonder what beast yields sugar syrup. This world's a circus, but you'd thrive. Your diet of meat and marches was paleo before it had a hashtag. You finish your meal, wipe your hands, and stand ready to conquer the escalator next. Food's still fuel, not a throne. As you leave, you're still Alexander, craving the road's dust over this shiny chaos. Another story waits maybe one of a scholar who fought with ideas, not swords. Settle in, maybe with a soft hum of a fan, and let's slip into a world where ideas were sharper than swords. You're in Alexandria around 400 CE, a city buzzing like a cosmic hive, its streets alive, with scholars, sailors, and the clash of faiths. At the heart of it stands Hypatia, a woman who wasn't supposed to lead but did anyway, wielding math and philosophy like a torch in a storm. She's not a warrior like Alexander, but a thinker whose mind lit up a fading world. Picture her wrapped in a philosopher's cloak, her voice cutting through the chatter of lecture halls, explaining stars and numbers to crowds who called her divine. This is her story, a tale of brilliance, defiance, and a city that loved her until it didn't. Drop a comment if you're vibing with this at 2 a.m. munching cereal, and let's dive into Alexandria's last light. It's a balmy evening, the air thick with salt and papyrus dust. You're walking Alexandria's colonnades where torches flicker like ideas on the verge of extinction. Hypatia's no myth. She's real born around 360 CE, a daughter of this intellectual crossroads. Her city's a melting pot. Greeks debate, Plato Christians pray in new churches, pagans cling to old gods. She's a mathematician, astronomer, philosopher, striding through a man's world, with a gaze that says she's earned her place. She lectures openly, her words weaving conic sections and cosmic orbits into something almost magical. Students, pagans, Christians, skeptics flock to her, drawn by a mind that doesn't just teach but challenges. She advises governors, navigates a city fracturing under faith, and embodies a classical world slipping away. This isn't just about equations, it's about a woman who dared to think when the world wanted her silent. Hypatia's Alexandria is a battleground reason versus zeal, old knowledge versus new dogma. She's a symbol, not by choice, but by existing a woman, a pagan, a scholar in a time when those labels painted targets. Her lectures aren't dry, they're electric sparking minds in a city growing dark. As you listen, the sea whispers nearby and you sense the tide turning against her. She's the last glow of a fading era, and her story's a reminder truth can shine, but it can also burn. Let's step back to her beginnings, where a father's radical choice set her on this path. You're in Alexandria, late 4th century, a city where the sun bakes the stones and ideas simmer like a philosopher's stew. You're Hypatia, a girl of maybe 10, sitting in a courtyard where the air smells of ink and sea salt. Your father Theon isn't like other dads. While most teach their sons to wrestle or trade, he's got you knee-deep in geometry. His scrolls spread out like battle plans. He's a mathematician tied to Alexandria's fading museum, a hub of learning that's seen better days. Theon doesn't care you're a girl. He sees a mind sharp as a stylus, and he's determined to hone it. You're not just learning, you're questioning scribbling numbers in the dust, chasing truths like they're fireflies. This is where Hypatia's story takes root in a world that says stay small, but a father who says think big. Your days are a blur of study, arithmetic's clean logic, astronomy's starry puzzles, Plato's lofty ideas about the soul. Theon's a tough teacher, his voice dry as papyrus, but his eyes light up when you solve a problem faster than he expected. You're not cloistered in some dusty room, you're out in the city trailing him to lectures, hearing scholars argue over Euclid or the gods. Alexandria's your classroom, its libraries half crumbled, hold scrolls that smell of time, its streets pulse with Greek Coptic Latin. You learn to hold your own, your voice steady, even when men raise brows at a girl debating conics. By your teens, you're outpacing Theon, your mind a lighthouse in a city where shadows are creeping in. This education's more than numbers, it's defiance. Women marry young fade into households, but Theon's betting on you to break that mould. You soak it up not for fame, but for love of the chase, the thrill of understanding why stars move or curves slice space. Your cloak, soon to be a philosopher's, is your armour in a world growing restless. Christians build churches, pagans whisper of lost gods, and you're caught between armed only with reason. As you trace a circle in the sand, you're already a radical, not by shouting, but by thinking. The city's watching, and soon you'll step into its spotlight, ready or not. Next, we'll see you teach your voice a beacon in Alexandria's storm. You're Hypatia now in your prime, striding through Alexandria's sun-baked streets. Your philosopher's cloak billowing like a sail catching the wind of ideas. It's around 390 CE, and the city's a cauldron of voices, merchants, haggling priests, preaching scholars, bickering over scrolls. You're headed to a lecture hall where a crowd's already gathering their murmurs, buzzing like bees around a hive. You're no ordinary teacher. You're a phenomenon, a woman whose words turn numbers into poetry and stars into stories. Your students aren't just locals, they're travellers from Rome, Athens, Syria, pagans and Christians alike, all drawn to your clarity, your fire. You step up chalk in hand and the room hushes ready for you to unravel the cosmos. This isn't just teaching. It's a quiet revolution, and you're its heart. You sketch parabolas on a board, your voice steady as you explain how curves slice space, how planets dance in orbits. It's math, but it feels like magic, your words weaving logic into wonder. You shift to Plato, dissecting the soul's climb toward truth, and the crowd leans in spellbound. You're not here to lecture. You're here to ignite, to make them question. Think, see. Beyond the hall, your influence ripples. You advise city officials, your counsel sharp as a compass, guiding Alexandria through its feuds. Governors seek your ear not because you're loud, but because you're clear, a mind unclouded by dogma. In a city splitting over faith, Christians rising, pagans fading, you're neutral, a bridge, though some already whisper you're a threat. Your life's austere, no gold or gossip, just books and starlight. You've turned down suitors, legend says you once flung a rag at one to shut him up about love and stayed unmarried. Your independence a shield. Your students like Synesius adore you, writing letters that read like love songs to your mind. You're their guide, not just in math, but in living boldly. But Alexandria's changing its air, growing thick with suspicion. Your cloak, your voice, your very presence, they're radical in a world tightening its grip. As you finish, the sea's roar echoes outside, a reminder of time's tide. Your light burns bright, but shadows are creeping. Next, let's explore your role in saving Alexandria's fading library, a legacy you carry like a flame. Your Hypatia, in Alexandria's twilight around 400 CE, walking through a city where the ghosts of knowledge linger like dust in torchlight. The great library, once the world's brain, is a shadow-burned, looted, scattered across annexes and private stashes. You're not its librarian, but you're its heir, carrying its spirit in your hands, your mind, your stubborn refusal to let truth fade. You're in a cramped study, scrolls piled like fallen soldiers, their ink fading but alive under your gaze. The air smells of papyrus and time, and you're editing texts, Diophantus's equations, Apollonius's conics, your stylus dancing, to preserve what wars and zealots threaten to erase. This isn't just scholarship, it's a quiet war to keep the light burning, and you're its warrior. You don't just copy, you improve your notes, clarifying Ptolemy's Almagest, that beast of a book, mapping the stars with math so dense it could stump a god. Your revisions make it sing accessible to minds centuries away, though you don't know it'll echo in Arabic texts long after Rome falls. You're rumoured to have tinkered with astrolabes, those star-catching tools and hydrometers, measuring liquids with a precision that feels like touching the divine. Your classrooms, wherever you stand, streets, forums, your home diagramming orbits, or Plato's forms on the ground, your students scribbling like they're chasing salvation. To you, science and philosophy aren't separate. They're one, a web connecting Earth to cosmos, mind to truth. You share it freely, your voice a lifeline in a city choking on dogma. But Alexandria's no haven. Churches rise where temples stood, and the library's remnants are pawns in a power game. You're a symbol, now not just a scholar, a pagan woman guarding pagan knowledge. Whispers call your tools sorcery, your neutrality defiance. You don't flinch, but you feel the city's pulse quicken, its tolerance fraying. As you roll a scroll, the sea's moan drifts through the window, a warning of tides turning. Your work's a beacon, but beacons draw storms. You keep writing, teaching, preserving, knowing each line's a thread in a tapestry you won't see finished. Next, we'll step into Alexandria's growing tensions, where your light becomes a target. Your Hypatia moving through Alexandria's streets in 410 CE, where the air's thick with salt sweat and something sharper fear. The city's no longer the open mind it once was. It's a tinderbox crackling with clashing faiths. You're wrapped in your philosopher's cloak, its folds heavy with the weight of eyes that follow you. Christians pack new churches, their chants echoing off marble. Pagans huddle in shrinking temples, whispering of lost gods. In between, Jews and scholars like you try to keep the peace, but it's like holding sand in a storm. You teach geometry and Plato in open forums, your voice steady, but the crowds are restless, their questions edged with suspicion. You're a scholar, but to some you're a symbol, a pagan woman daring to think in a world that's choosing sides. Alexandria's splitting at the seams. Christianity is not just a faith now, it's power, backed by bishops and mobs who see doubt as sin. Pagans, once the city's backbone, are fading, their rituals mocked or banned. You stay neutral, teaching Christians and pagans alike your lecture's a haven of reason. But neutrality is a tightrope, and the ground's falling away. You advise city officials, your logic cooling their feuds, but whispers trail you. She's too bold, too visible, too unwed. Your independence, once admired, now stings like a slap to those who want women silent. The sea's roar outside your window sounds like a warning, each wave a reminder that tides turn fast. You sense the city's pulse quickening, its streets alive with graffiti and glares. This isn't just about faith, it's about control. Knowledge, your life's work, is caught in the crossfire. Your astrolabe, a tool for charting stars, is called a sorcerer's toy by those who fear what they don't grasp. You keep teaching your chalk tracing orbits, but the air's heavy with change. Alexandria's no longer a city of ideas, it's a battlefield, and you're standing in the open, unarmed but unbowed. As you leave the lecture hall, a Christian hymn clashes with a pagan prayer, and you know trouble's brewing. One man's rising to fan these flames, Bishop Cyril, and his shadow's falling fast. Let's see how his power shifts the city's fragile balance, pulling you deeper into its storm. You're Hypatia, in Alexandria 412 CE, where the city's air feels like a held breath charged with the hum of power shifting. You're teaching in a sunlit courtyard, your voice weaving Euclid's proofs, but your ears catch the distant chant of a Christian mob. A new bishop, Cyril, has taken the throne of Alexandria's church, and he's not here to whisper prayers. He's a force young and fierce with a preacher's fire and a warlord's grit. He inherited the church from his uncle Theophilus, but he's carving his own path, wielding theology like a blade to slice through Alexandria's fragile peace. You're not political, but you're caught in his orbit, a scholar whose reason threatens his vision of a city bowed to one faith. This is Cyril's rise, and it's shaking the ground beneath you. Cyril's no quiet cleric. His sermons pack churches, his words sparking crowds like flint on dry grass. He's closing rival sects' chapels, expelling Jews, and turning the streets into his stage. His goal, a Christian Alexandria, pure and unchallenged with the church above all, even Rome's governor Orestes. Orestes, a Christian but loyal to imperial law, wants balance, tolerating pagans like you. He seeks your counsel, your logic a compass in this chaos, but that makes you a target. Cyril loathes Orestes, and you're the bridge between them, a woman whose influence burns in his eyes. His followers, the Parabolani monks, turned muscle patrol the city, their robes, hiding fists ready to enforce faith. You've seen their glares, heard their murmurs, pagan witch troublemaker. You keep teaching your chalk-tracing orbits, but the city's fracturing. Cyril's silence about you speaks louder than sermons. His refusal to defend a scholar he knows is innocent is a signal subtle but sharp. Orestes and Cyril clash, their feud a fire spreading through Alexandria's streets. You're not fighting, but you're in the crossfire, your cloak a beacon to those who fear reason. The sea outside roars its waves like time closing in. You're still Hypatia mind alight, but the whispers are growing darker, calling you sorceress, blaming you for the city's strife. As you leave the courtyard, a Parabolani's stare chills you. The trap's tightening, and we'll soon see how those whispers turn to screams. You're Hypatia gliding through Alexandria's streets in 414 CE, your chariot rattling over cobblestones worn smooth by centuries of feet. The air's heavy with sea salt and tension, like a storm brewing under a clear sky. Your philosopher's cloak, once a badge of honour, now draws stares, some curious, some sharp as knives. Alexandria's turned feral, its pulse racing with rumours that cling to you like damp linen. You're a scholar, not a sorceress, but the city's whispering otherwise. They say your astrolabe, that brass star mapper, is a tool for dark arts bending minds and stars alike. Your lectures, once packed with eager students, now attract hecklers muttering about pagan spells. You keep teaching your voice steady, but it's like shouting into a gale reason's losing to rage. The streets hum with lies you're bewitching. Governor Orestes keeping him from Bishop Cyril's fold. Your math is demonic, your neutrality a betrayal. It's nonsense, but nonsense spreads faster than Euclid's proofs when fear's in the air. You're too visible, a woman unwed, unafraid, riding openly when others hide. To the hardline Christians, you're the old world's ghost haunting their new order. Your influence, once a light, is now a lightning rod. The Parabolani, Cyril's monk enforcers, stalk the city, their eyes glinting with zeal. You catch one staring as you pass his robe, swaying like a warning flag. They whisper, you're the reason Alexandria's divided, as if equations could spark riots. You know better. Dogma's the fuel, not your chalk. You pause by the harbour, the sea's churn mirroring the city's unrest. Your students still come, but their questions falter, tinged with worry. You teach Plato trace orbits, but the air's thick with menace. A modern crowd might call it a witch hunt, but here it's just Alexandria eating itself alive. You're not naive, you see the trap closing, the whispers hardening into threats. Yet you ride on your chariot, a quiet defiance, your mind a fortress. The city's turning, and you're its scapegoat. As you head home, a shout echoes too close. The mob's not far, and their anger's a wave about to break. Next, we'll face that wave head-on, as Alexandria's fury claims its brightest star. It's spring 415 CE, and you're Hypatia, mid-50s, riding your chariot through Alexandria's streets, the sun warm, but the air cold with hate. The city's a pressure cooker, its cobblestones vibrating with the chants of a mob you can't ignore. You've known the risk's whispers branding you a witch, a pagan threat, but you've kept teaching your mind a lighthouse in this storm. Today, the storm hits, a crowd led by the Parabolani. Cyril's zealot enforcers surges toward you, their faces twisted with righteous fury. You're yanked from your chariot, the wood splintering under rough hands, your cloak torn like a flag of surrender you'll never wave. They drag you not to a court, but a church, a sacred space turned slaughterhouse, and the world tilts into nightmare. The mob's a beast fueled by lies and fear, wielding roof tiles or maybe oyster shells sharp as betrayal. They strike and pain blooms hot and merciless, your skin flayed by their rage. This isn't justice, it's passion ideology unleashed like a wildfire. Your Hypatia Scholar of Stars now a symbol they're desperate to erase. They tear at you limb from limb, the church's walls echoing with screams that aren't yours, you're silent defiant even now. When it's over, they burn your remains as if fire could wipe out your light. Alexandria loses more than a woman. It loses its soul, the last breath of its classical heart. No trial, no verdict, just blood and ashes, a city's shame written in your fall. You were the teacher who made math sing, who counselled governors, who stood tall when the world demanded you kneel. Now the streets are quiet, but it's a hollow hush, like a city holding its breath after a crime. Orestes, your ally, is powerless. Cyril Untouchable offers crocodile tears. No one's punished, no justice sought. Your death's a door slamming on antiquity's reason, leaving dogma to rule the ruins. As the smoke clears, Alexandria's no longer the world's mind, it's just another city scarred and silent. Your light's gone, but its afterglow lingers a challenge to the dark. Next we'll see the aftermath as your city mourns in silence, and your legacy begins to fade. You're in Alexandria spring 415 CE days after Hypatia's brutal murder, and the city feels like it's swallowed its own heart. The streets still hum, vendors shout carts, rattle gulls, cry over the harbour, but there's a hush beneath, like a wound too raw to touch. You walk past the church where she was torn apart, its stones scrubbed clean but stained by memory. Hypatia's gone. Her chariot splintered, her scrolls untouched in a study that feels like a tomb. The city's soul, that vibrant clash of Greek logic, Egyptian mystery and Roman grit, has dimmed as if the sun itself mourns. You're not her, but you feel the loss, a scholar's light snuffed out by a mob's rage. Alexandria's quieter now, but it's the silence of shame, not peace. Governor Orestes, Hypatia's ally, is a ghost of himself, his authority crumbling like the city's old temples. He tries to act to demand justice, but his voice drowns in the tide of Bishop Cyril's power. Cyril Untouchable offers vague regret words as hollow as a broken amphora. No arrests, no trials, just whispers that Hypatia brought it on herself, a pagan in a Christian world. His Parabolani, the mob's muscle, swagger through the streets, their robes, a warning to anyone who'd speak her name. The city's scholars, once bold, now huddle in private, their debates muted. The lecture halls where Hypatia's voice made stars dance echo with absence. Churches chant louder, drowning out the old gods, and Alexandria's cosmopolitan spirit, Greek Jewish pagan, slips into shadow. This isn't just a murder, it's a turning point. Alexandria, the world's mind, is sliding into rigidity, its libraries neglected, its questions silenced. You stand by the sea waves crashing like time's relentless march and feel the city's fracture. Hypatia's death wasn't just personal, it was cultural, the last gasp of a world that valued reason over zeal. Cyril's star rises his church stronger than ever, while Orestes fades. Recalled or broken history's not sure. The silence grows, and with it Hypatia's name begins to vanish buried under dogma's weight. But her light, though dimmed, isn't gone. Let's see how her legacy was buried and how it refused to stay in the dark. You're standing in Alexandria's fading glow, years after Hypatia's death in 415 CE, where the city's libraries are more myth than memory. The air's thick with dust and dogma, and Hypatia's name, once a beacon, is barely a whisper scrubbed from the scrolls of power. You're not her, but you feel the ache of her absence, a scholar whose mind lit stars now reduced to a cautionary tale. Her murder wasn't enough for her enemies, they needed her. Erased her work, buried like a relic too dangerous to touch. Her commentaries on Ptolemy, her edits to Diophantus, her tools like the astrolabe, they're scattered, unattributed, or lost their brilliance, dimmed by a world that fears women who think. This is the story of how Hypatia's legacy was suppressed, and how it clung to life in the cracks of history. Alexandria's new order under Bishop Cyril's shadow has no room for a pagan philosopher. Her writings, once prized, are left to crumble, or claimed by others, her name stripped from texts she clarified. Students like Synesius, now a bishop, cherish her in private letters, but publicly they bow to the church's tide. The city's intellectuals, cowed by the mob's memory, avoid her name, teaching in whispers or not at all. The library's remnants already battered or neglected, their scrolls carted off or burned in later purges. Hypatia's contributions, her math, her astronomy survive only in fragments filtered through Arabic scholars centuries later, her authorship a ghost. It's as if Alexandria, ashamed of its crime, decided to forget her entirely, sealing her in silence like a pharaoh's tomb. But erasure's never complete. Her students scattered across the empire carry her lessons in their minds, planting seeds in quiet corners. Her ideas, though uncredited, ripple through time, her logic woven into the texts that shape science's future. You walk the city's streets, now ruled by chants and crosses, and sense her absence like a missing star. The sea murmurs its waves, a reminder that truth like water finds a way. Hypatia's name fades, but her spirit lingers, waiting for a world ready to hear it. The Renaissance will call her back a martyr for reason, but that's centuries off. For now, her lights a flicker defiant in the dark. Next, we'll see how her story resurfaces, a whisper growing louder through time. You're standing in a Renaissance scholar's study, 15th century Florence, where candlelight dances on vellum pages, and the air smells of ink and rediscovery. Europe's waking from a long sleep, its minds hungry for the old world's wisdom, Greek, Roman, Alexandrian. Hypatia's name, buried for centuries under Alexandria's silence, is stirring again like a seed cracking through stone. You're not her, but you feel her pulse in the dusty manuscripts humanists pore over their quills, scratching like they're racing time. She's no longer a forgotten scholar. She's a martyr for reason, her story whispered in salons and scribbled in margins. This is her Renaissance, a rebirth, not just of her name, but of the ideas she died for, lighting a world groping for truth. Scholars like Petrarch and Ficino, digging through monastery libraries, find fragments of her legacy. Ptolemy's Almagest, Diophantus's equations bearing her invisible touch. They uncover tales from Synesius's letters, Socrates' Scholasticus's histories, painting Hypatia as a beacon cut down by zeal. She's romanticised, sure, a tragic heroine in flowing robes, but her core shines a woman who thought boldly when the world demanded silence. By the Enlightenment, she's a rallying cry. Voltaire pen, sharp as a blade, mourns her as proof of dogma's poison, his words crackling like a fire under orthodoxy's feet. She's in plays, poems, her death, a symbol of what happens when fear trumps thought. You flip a page, the parchment crisp, and see her sketched cloak, billowing eyes fierce, a mind that refused to bend. This rediscovery isn't just academic, it's a rebellion. Hypatia's story challenges churches and kings, her light a mirror for a world questioning authority. You step outside Florence's bells ringing and feel her spirit in the air, mingling with the Arno's murmur. She's not just history, she's a call to think, to question, to stand firm. But her full legacy's still unfolding, waiting for a modern world to claim her. As the candles flicker, you know her story's far from done. Let's leap forward to a time when Hypatia's name inspires scientists, rebels, and dreamers alike, her light burning brighter than ever. You're in the 21st century, scrolling through a digital archive, or maybe standing by a statue of Hypatia, her bronze gaze cutting through time. The air hums with progress, screens glow, cities pulse. But Hypatia's story, born in Alexandria's dust, still resonates like a signal from a distant star. She's no longer just a name in faded scrolls. She's a symbol, a challenge, a pioneer whose light refuses to dim. You're not her, but you feel her echo in every fight for truth. Every woman breaking barriers, every mind daring to question. This is her modern legacy, woven into science feminism, and the stubborn pursuit of reason in a world that sometimes prefers noise. Her story's alive, and it's calling you to listen. To mathematicians, Hypatia's a trailblazer, one of the first women recorded in the field. Her work on conics and astronomy a cornerstone for later minds. STEM students battling for space in labs and lecture halls see her as their ancestor, her astrolabe a prototype for their telescopes. Feminists claim her as a hero, a woman who owned her intellect when society demanded she shrink. Humanists hail her as a warning. Knowledge is fragile, easily crushed by fear's fist. Her story inspires novels, films, even schools named in her honour, each retelling a spark in the dark. Scholars trace her fingerprints in Arabic texts, her edits to Ptolemy, shaping science's path, though her name was often erased. You pause the sea's distant roar in your mind and realise she's everywhere, quiet but unyielding. Hypatia's not just history, she's a mirror.